Are you frustrated thinking about how you can more effectively reach out to your donors? Well, we've talked a bit about nonprofits and donors this month. Actually, we've talked a lot about nonprofits and donors this month, but we're not done yet. Today, we're going to focus on two things. First, why is it important to personalize your message, and how to make personalization impactful. It's an important topic and we've got a lot to cover, so let's jump in. Hey everyone, I'm Ian Campbell. I am CEO of Mission Suite. Before we jump into today's video, do me a favor, hit the subscribe button and ring the bell so that you're notified every time that we post new videos. So a couple weeks ago, we talked about segmentation and why that's important. Last week, we talked about messaging and why that's important. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that here because it's a significant first step to effective personalization. So if you missed that video on segmentation specifically, make sure to go check that out. Essentially, if you can identify specific characteristics of your donors, you can segment them and begin to tailor your communications and more for them. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So what is personalization? First things first, I want to touch on actually what it is, what it means. It's not just dropping in someone's name after dear at the start of an ask or at the start of an email. Personalization is getting to know your audience and offering them options that are going to suit their needs related to your organization. Ideally, personalization can change the nonprofit conversation from a one-way please and thank you to a two-way how can we best work together, and letting them know that they're in this with you. I want to get into why personalization is so impactful as you speak to your donors and to your bottom line. Before we get into that, I want to first talk about some of the secondhand benefits and things that you might not realize personalization can do for you and for your nonprofit as well. First, using data, segmentation and personalization tells the world, and not just your audience, that you are committed to efficiency, to technology, and to advancement, right? This can be a positive sign to potential donors that the money that they pledge to your organization is being used wisely. In recent years, these marketing techniques have repeatedly shown that they are going to increase your ROI. Your organization using these tools sends a definite message that you're not just sending an ask, hoping for the best and collecting a check. Also, your organization's willingness to use tools to reach your audience best is a way to foster more open communication with your board, your donors, your volunteers, and anybody else that you need to be talking to. Think about it. In the past, most nonprofit asks were just one-way communication. It was a note that says, please give, right? Pretty uninspired, right? Seeing personalization is not just dropping a name into an email, but allowing your audience to choose how and why they connect with you is a positive way to say, we hear you. This can be a huge step in changing the traditional donor relationship and to building more trust, more appreciation, and more engagement. Being able to collect this type of data can also impact how your organization uses outside resources. If you can drill down on your donor segments, well, you'll likely be able to ask for help with volunteer committee roles, capitalizing on your donor skills or interests. For example, let's say you know that your donors include an event planner. In that case, well, fantastic. We've got a gala coming up, right? You can probably take advantage of their industry connections and use their services instead of hiring an outsider who has no connection to your organization. Not only can this save you money, but now you have engaged your donors on a whole different level, and you've fostered engagement and you're continuing to build that relationship. And speaking of resources, if you can harness the power of data and of segmentation, well, then you can identify lapsed donors or unprofitable revenue streams. Then you can make better decisions about what to do. Imagine if you can send a personalized note to any lapsed donor and ask, why? Why haven't you given to us in a while? Not only could you potentially gain insight about why they disconnected, but then you could also potentially fix a problem that you may not have even known about. Who knows? You may even be able to fix a relationship. And if this donor has moved on, well, you can remove them from your universe and potentially save resources there as well. Now, there are some statistics about personalization for nonprofits that you should probably be aware of, right? Because thanks to the power of the internet, I could pretty easily quote dozens of sources and studies that show personalization is the answer to many nonprofit marketing needs. And I do have some stats to share. But the truth is that the days of sending out generic messages to everyone and just hoping for a single-digit return are over. And the statistics bear this out many times over. Segmenting and personalizing your communications have so many benefits for your nonprofit and will also save you time and effort overall. And that's a pretty solid fact at this point. First, for context, let's talk about consumers, people who exchange money for goods and services. In 2020, an article in Forbes noted an exceedingly high percentage of consumers and shoppers, about 71% in fact, who were frustrated when a shopping experience is actually impersonal. And many shoppers say that encountering content that isn't personalized would stop them from making a purchase. Imagine how those people would feel if they were donating money and not getting a personalized experience. I understand for-profit and nonprofit industries are obviously different here, right? But the point here is that if you're not personalizing, then you run a real risk of losing donors. A few studies in the nonprofit sector specifically are echoing this statement too. The vast majority of donors polled all stated time and again that they would be willing to give more, some as much as 25% more, for a more personalized experience. On November 2nd, the Blackbaud Institute, a leader in research and insight in the social good community, released a report called The Tipping Point. It expanded on some donor statistics around personalization, and guess what? Personalization wins almost every single time. So yes, personalization is valuable for your nonprofit organization. It's worth spending your time on, and I would go so far as to say it's probably essential to what you're trying to do and what you're trying to build. If you think your nonprofit can't afford this type of segmentation and personalization, well, I would actually probably say that you can't afford not to do it. Digging a little bit deeper with your audience is going to unlock so much information that's going to yield better results for you and for them. It's a fact that people who feel appreciated and included are far more likely to stay engaged and offer more than just dollars. This will lead to a significantly better return and a stronger organization overall. I know it's going to take some time, but it's worth it. Now that we all agree that it's important, let's focus on how you can create personalized messages. Effective personalization is always based on data, and the fact is that you need to have the data to deliver messages that will last with your donors and your volunteers. And no matter the size of your organization, you should absolutely have a reliable CRM. Something like Mission Suite. I have to say it. But really, a CRM can help you mine this data for good segmentation, appropriate personalization, and also to automate some of your outreach. And of course, if I can answer any questions for you to help understand how having a CRM can be that impactful and how it can help that work for you, please let me know. Drop a comment down in the comment section, and we'll be sure to respond. In our last video, we talked about how to segment and what some of those groups are. And because all these groups may respond to different appeals, their messages need to be different too. So ideally, before you can drill down on the how, when, and why of personalized communications, you should commit to spending some time with your donor segments. Make sure that you understand the data that you've collected and your various segments. Again, we talked about this before, so check out that episode if you haven't yet. Once you have your segmented lists, it's time to start crafting messages and outreach methods that will work best to speak to those groups. You guessed it, homework time. Think about what you want to know about these segments and draft some questions like, why are people giving to organization? What do our donors and what do our volunteers what are they looking for in return? Are we communicating enough, or are we communicating too much? Are we thanking our donors enough, and do they actually feel appreciated? Now let's talk a little bit about the why behind your audience. As we talked about many times over the course of the past few videos, people give and they volunteer for a bunch of different reasons. And when you can speak to that in a more personalized message, you're signaling your cohesion with them and with their needs. You're making yourself more connected. This strengthens your organization beyond merely a financial gain. Just like a sales prospect, no two donor journeys are the same. Understanding your donor's reasoning can help you connect with them on a much deeper level. And speaking of dollars, think about how your audience could have more to give than just a check every year. Knowing your audience is a valuable tool to turn a donor or a volunteer into a lot more. Maybe you want more donors to be volunteers or vice versa. This is how you can do it. If you knew a donor why included a personal connection to your cause, well, don't you want to know more about that? And much more than just a donation, that person might potentially become an advocate, an educator to people who don't know your organization, or maybe a speaker, and maybe they're sharing a personal story at an event. But you have to get to know that donor to understand and unlock these little gems of experience. Now, it's more than likely that a lot of your messages are going to include some sort of an ask, something where you're actually asking for a donation. And today, we're going to talk a little bit about the ask beyond the ask, because you should be asking for more. Not more money, but more information. Ask your donors about the things that they like. Ask them why they give. Ask them what their interests are. Ask them anything that you can think of to get more information out of those people. It doesn't have to be specific, but even some general information can make a big difference. And you don't have to ask for details with every communication. But maybe once or twice a year, right? As your donation cycle allows, you should put together a survey and ask your donors and volunteers about themselves, right? A couple times a year, that can't hurt, right? But before you think, well, this is just too much work, well, it doesn't have to be. A brief survey, a quick survey, can help you continue to segment and personalize your communications in advance. Again, most CRMs have some sort of survey capability, whether it's just a regular form builder, an actual survey tool, whatever it is, right? But using those, you can also automatically segment donors. And basically, answers to concise survey questions can dictate the next stop in the donor journey for that person. And in the long run, it can save you a lot of time and could boost engagement and, of course, help you bring in more money. Showing your donors that they matter to you. Nonprofits walk an exceptionally fine line between raising money to fund their cause and spending money on outreach. No donor wants to think that their donation was used for some lavish thank you event, but they probably still want to be acknowledged in some way. So how do you do both? Well, that's with the data that you can bring in. Just as like not every person gives for the same reason, not everybody wants to be recognized in the same way. Some donors give just to give, and they don't need anything else. We call these dream donors. Others seek some sort of public acknowledgement. And still others, they might feel most appreciated with a small gift, maybe branded merchandise or, a gift certificate, gift card to a steakhouse, whatever the case might be. But if you can bring this information in from your donors, well, then you can best personally acknowledge them in the ways that are most meaningful for them. Obviously, each donation should be met with a personalized thank you letter, but going beyond that could go a really long way to making your audience feel like they are actually a part of your organization. Another reason you use personalization, it allows you to offer choices. Not only are personalized messages meaningful, but they can actually be beneficial to your audience because it allows them to choose what and how often they hear from you. Some people might want to get a personalized thank you after each and every donation, and that's it. Others might want to read your annual report to learn about status or project updates, and still others are going to fall somewhere in between. Allowing donors to segment themselves in this way is a small gesture, but can have a big impact. Over-communicating with donors can be bothersome, and it can just be annoying. And not communicating with them can be just as harmful. Finding the right balance for each donor can keep everyone happy and engaged. And with a good CRM, with well-personalized messaging, you can actually let them choose themselves. So what did we learn today? Well, we talked about the fact that segmentation and personalization for your nonprofit audience are critical. I don't think we can overstate that. With any challenge, the more you understand it, the better that you can find the solution. And segmentation and personalization are keys to understanding your donors and engaging them for both of your benefit. If you heard anything here that you'd like to know more about, I'd definitely love to talk to you about it. Feel free to reach out to us, drop a note in the comments, and we will get back to you as soon as we can. Hey, I hope you got something out of this video. If you did, do me a favor, give it a thumbs up, give it a like, give it a share, give it a comment. So all these things help us with the algorithm so that others can see it too. And also, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell so that you're notified every time that we post new videos. And while you're here, check out the videos that are on your screen, and we will see you next time around. Cheers.